Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a lovely Thanksgiving. And welcome to the Hillsborough County TPO Transportation Livable Roadways meeting. If we could all please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. For the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Councilman Citro,
Here.
Cal Hardy, Una Johnson,
Here.
Mark Hudson,
Present.
Mike Marino, Melissa Colazzo, David Hay,
He's online and alternates physically in the room.
yeah, no, I saw, I'm sorry, is somebody in the room? Is Brenda in the room?
Yes, Brent's in the room.
Okay, thank you. Emily Hinsdale,
Present.
Chris Thompson,
Present.
Larry Josephson, Richard Rank, Karen Kress,
Here.
Matt Lewis,
Here.
Omar Alvarado,
Here, in a way.
His alternates here in the room. Thank you.
is that Scott or Bobby?
Oh,
Or,
anyone? Skip.
okay, Jason Jackman,
Here.
Catherine Coyle,
Here.
Arizona Jenkins, Emmett Duran,
Here.
Sarah Hendricks.
Here.
Let's see here. Somebody else popped in online. Okay. Ana Quinones. I know that they had stuff to do. Okay.
Anna was-
Gloria Belancia. Gus Ignas.
Here.
We do have an in-person quorum. Chair, would you call for a vote of consent for remote participation?
Let the record reflect that we have Mr. Marino, Mr. Calhardy here also. Okay, maybe we have, I'll entertain a motion for the remote member participation.
Second.
We have a motion made by Ms. Coyle, seconded by Ms. Kress. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Thank you. Ms. Silva, do we have any public comment?
Nope.
Nothing online up there. Seeing no public comment, I will entertain a motion for the approval of minutes from October 26, 2022.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion made by Ms. Kress, seconded by Ms. Coyle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Ms. Silva, you would like to tell us about our future meetings?
Sure. Okay. Apologize, but last year we tried to get creative because the board's calendar shifted at a different time of the month, and sometimes it was difficult to get items before you, before they were going to take action on them. So we switched to the fourth Wednesday of the month. That ended up being a huge conflict for Plant City and the FDOT's community traffic safety team. So many of us can participate in those before we had to pick. So we're going to shift back to our historical third Wednesday of the month with, an exception for spring break. So the calendar is in the packet. I also then put it in front of you. So if that seems to be workable for everybody, we just need to approve it for this committee's perspective. So we move forward to the TPO for final approval. Looking for a move, either an edit, a suggested edit, or move.
Would you mind if we take 2 seconds so everybody can peruse this?
I'll motion to approve it.
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Who was the motion maker? Ms. Kress, who seconded? By Ms. Kress, seconded by Mr. Marino. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Any further discussion? Motion passes. Excellent. Thank you all.
And then Cheryl, our board secretary, will send out the schedulers to your calendars. And then just a reminder that if you lose your link or if you don't find it in your email, because you guys are all made panelists when we set up the meetings, when they get sent to your calendar, so you don't get added in like a member of the public, like as an attendee in GoToWebinar. That's great because you have your individual links, it comes to your calendar and your email. If you don't find it, no problem. All meetings of the TPO are posted on the calendar page with a link right to however it's being broadcast, WebEx, GoTo, Zoom, whatever. So you just go to that link, you come in as an attendee. Either I or Gail moves you over as a panelist. So you don't have to text me in the morning of because I'm usually busy. Just self-service by going to the calendar page. So it's a great backup for any meeting. So it's, again, as soon as the TPO backs on it. All right, so we're seeing the presentation.
I was going to say we have status reports now. We're going to hear from FDOT.
If there's an action item. It's James.
Yes, you are correct. There is. I got it from myself. Action items, we have Tampa School Transportation Safety Study. Ms. Silva, please.
All right. It's running GoTo at the same time, so looks different here. Okay, so I have a lot to present to you, so I made a script so I didn't skip too many things or go crazy. So this presentation is a culmination of work over the last 10 months in partnership with the City of Tampa Mobility Department and with our stakeholder group. There's a lot of project elements to share with you, starting with the high-level project overview, the process we use to select the focus schools, the data collection highlights, and the school-specific transportation system improvements, the specific education encouragement strategies that were included in the plan, and all this information is detailed on the website and the accompanying technical report. So our goal for today is to touch on the key findings from each phase of the project, and those of you in the room have a copy of the executive summary, so it's a condensed version which is highlights, and then it's also on the website. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go into detail for recommendations for all 8 schools, but just give you a bit of the overview of how we did it, and then I'll highlight one school. So, as many of you are aware, because some of you were participated in the last study, the TPO completed its first in 2018 and identified physical improvements at the top 12 least safe schools in the entire district. It was data driven. It considered equity, but it was minimally considered in that one. And then we did engineering countermeasures. We're very excited that the Department of Transportation, the school district, City of Tampa, and the county and the school district have already done many things to implement the recommendations in and around those schools. So this time the focus was we reevaluated all schools, but the focus, because the request was from the City of Tampa, was on Tampa specific schools. Similar to the prior one, we identified engineering countermeasures such as sidewalk gaps, marked crosswalks, installing traffic control, such as an all-way stop or traffic signal. In some cases, we identified potential locations for vehicular travel lane or repurposed a bike lane into a bike lane. We also recognize that there's educational and encouragement things. So many of the things you hear when you go out are not something we can fix by changing our curve extension, et cetera. They're actually behavioral things. So this time we took a portion of the contract and designated it to that task. So we learned just like the students. So we wanted to have some of it to encourage parents getting out the car line and onto the sidewalk, bus lane, or bike lane. Okay, so all right. So we kind of resurrected and had a reunion of transportation working group members. So it was broken into 6 primary tasks, including convening that stakeholder group. We met throughout the various components of the project and the deliverables. It was diverse and included staff from CFT of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Departments, Cutter, DOT, sidewalk stoppers, the school district, and local health groups. We worked with the school district to update the school survey that we did last time, and we will see the highlights of that in a minute. And we updated their prioritization list for all schools based on current data and a stronger focus on equity. And then we went out and conducted field reviews while the schools were in session, and then we assessed strategies throughout encouragement and education based on the specifics, and then we did the physical improvements. Okay, so how did we evaluate it? The focus school selection was process of largely data-driven process of all points allocated for the school based on a number of factors, such as equity was given at 40% this time, safety 40%, and then miscellaneous factors were 20 points. The goal is to select schools that would be have minimal prior investments also, and then have the outcomes help all the schools and the community. So all the factors that were considered relative weighted, summarized in this slide, including the underserved communities of concern designations, percentage of students receiving or qualifying for free and reduced cost lunch, the proximity to the high injury network for both the county and the city of Tampa's recently updated one, a number of the crashes for typical school travel times and school-aged children, and then other factors like being close proximity to a school or an after-school program like the Boys and Girls Club. And then it was weighted, and as got feedback from the stakeholder group and adjusted it based on that. Okay, so final list. Here's your top 8. So these are the schools that we did detailed analysis for. The schools evaluated 2018 also were still at the top of our overall list, but it does take time for implementing infrastructure. It does take time for that infrastructure and those changes to show up in the data. But since they've been evaluated, they came off so that we could move on to another school that could use the analysis and recommendations. All right, so when we updated that survey, we got 10,000 responses from the parents. So the school district helped us send out questions that are based on national safe routes to school questions. Of the 10,000, that represented 18,000 students out of 224,000 students in the district. So based on it, the enrollment type elementary schools were slightly overrepresented. High school families were underrepresented, not surprising. And then while responses from any one specific school are generally not statistically significant, since some of the schools had a low response rate, the survey responses overall did help us identify general transportation trends and challenges of the families in the district. About 88% of the responses indicated that their student is driven to or from school in some sort of vehicle, including personal vehicle, school bus, or transit bus, or a contracted private transportation or daycare transportation. This is some variation depending on the time of day, with more children walking home or taking the bus home after school. All right. While the area surrounding each school has its own unique characteristics, families were asked to provide information related to the transportation barriers of having students walk or bike from school. More than half cited distance from their home to be one of the most significant. Speed, traffic along the route, and then safety of specific intersections or crossings were also identified as barriers for more than half of the families. So those are the areas you'll see that we focused on addressing. Lack of sidewalks and paths and weathers were also top issues. For about a third of the families, lack of other students or adults to walk or bike with them was seen as a barrier, so providing walking partner matching or walking school bus, along with promotion of those strategies, could entice some of the families to get their student to walk or bike and get them out of those long car rides. So violence or crime in the area was cited as about a 20% barrier. Convenience and before and after school activities also were noted as a reason. And these reasons demonstrate that, some of them demonstrate that no matter what we do from our perspective, we're not going to get everyone to choose to walk or bike. The survey related to how far students live from their school shows how challenging it may be to get some students to walk given the distance. Reasonable expectations of walking distance also vary by grade level, with reasonable walking distance for younger children is more appropriate for a half mile, with the distance increasing to about a mile for students middle to high school. Based on the district-wide responses, about 20% of students live within this mile of their school, and 56% live more than 2 miles from school to qualify for bus. A new question was added to the survey to determine if COVID-19 had impacted their travel patterns. For the most part, we discovered it did not change the patterns. While some students stopped taking the school bus, others started to. About 8.5% reported their student is transported in a vehicle more often. A slight increase in carpooling and walking was also reported. So we have to radically change our approach. One of the barriers for parents and guardians letting their student walk or bike is the uncertainty of where their children are in the world. So we asked families how they track their students and travel, and if their student is allowed to travel on their own. We received a wide variety of responses. So these are some things that we could share with other parents so they might feel more comfortable if they knew of these different technologies. Also, during our study, we had the great timing of that Here Comes the Bus app is now available through the school district. That was something identified back when we first started looking at school transportation, having some certainty and knowing when the bus is coming and where the bus is located. And if your student is on or off of that bus is huge. I can tell you as mom, it's been, a whole hour of gap sometimes between when it comes one day and another day. It's just, heart-wrenching to think if you're a little one standing out there for an hour waiting for a bus and you don't know if it's coming or not. So I get a text alert saying it's a mile away, or I can get an email alert notification. And then in next phase, which is anticipated to be next semester, they've got like a swipe card for the kids, so you'll know and get an alert once they enter the bus. But it's all encrypted and protected, so you don't know, it's not as detailed as some of them, but it's all geo-based and it's great. So, yay, we're gonna get them out of the car lines maybe. All right, so here's some high-level survey results of the principal administration results, because we didn't just ask the parents what they thought. We're like, hey, these principals know their schools, so let's see what they have to say. So it was great that they were receptive to a study, and we learned which schools have the most walking. We did evaluate just elementary, so that's good if they have a good walking as well. And then what we heard from them, that circulation is a big issue and traffic is a big issue. So not surprising, we looked at and addressed those things. And then it's also really great that the school district has a site circulation committee that they developed as a result of our previous work. And even the new staff are keeping that tradition going, and they can take the results of our study and use that. So we asked them for their strategies, again, getting to share these between schools. So if one veteran principal at a certain type of school has a great technique, then the others will be able to, are going to share this between the principals throughout the district. And then resources. So they had a variety of different resources. Some schools had like really great, awesome barricades, and then others, their cones were disintegrating and falling apart. So knowing where and how to get access, right. So here's the first part was the strategies. Now I'm going to the resources. That's what's great now. Okay, and then we went out and did field reviews and watched and observed how the schools perform. for each of them, AM and PM, and had some interesting observations. There you can see my cone fatality label because they're falling apart, and the parents just drive over them and ignore them, and then they are all crunchy. And then we've got misbehaving parents parking on the sidewalks. One of them I labeled sidewalk jail because it's actually dead stop and you can't walk down the sidewalk, so you're forced at certain points of the day to walk in the actual narrow street. So lots of maintenance and issues were observed and used to help inform our recommendations. And we saw some things that were working with the great crossing guard locations, and ADA issues were observed out there as well. And then we studied the bus strategies, our busing getting to and from the school enjoys. So you can see the whole street is closed except to buses at arrival and dismissal. Other communities have this technique. It's called school streets, similar to our concept of open streets, like when we closed Bay Shore and opened it up to the public. So we're schools doing it, so we're hoping to formalize that policy and make it more prevalent throughout the schools. Doing a maintenance of traffic plan for each school and giving them a set of cones is one of the goals and recommendations of the study, so that they know right from an engineering perspective, this is where you place them, this is a safe way to divert the traffic, this is when you put them out, and then it gets filed with that school and turned over to each resource officer or principal. We did go out and meet with the principals firsthand after we did the field reviews and scratched our notes everywhere for each of the schools. And went out, took photos. You can see that bicycle there where we videoed, did a GoPro, so you don't even have to remember every little thing, but we experienced the whole thing like a child biking to school would by going out and filming to and from that level and high level through the whole thing. I'll highlight West Tampa in a little more detail. You can see that we color coded the recommendations. Some are speed related, some are infrastructure related, some are behavior and other things, and the physical improvements are represented conceptually here. Some will take a little more analysis and feasibility because they're bigger engineering studies. We looked at the results for each family specific to the school, went with a deeper dive into those 10,000 survey responses, and we looked at what the principals said for West Tampa, and then met with them and went over the recommendations. So you can see here we wrote all over and scratched it up and got specific feedback and addressed and responded to their feedback for the school. And then it all got written up and it's in the final report. You can see like, oh, like you can see the little dash line there right in front of that school where we saw an image earlier where they have a specific lane, but then it's one lane from the school, so people are speeding past that lane and or going the wrong direction. So one recommendation is to delineate that lane better. So that's one of our Saves Lives recommendations in that location. And more recommendations, more detail, and blow-ups of the specifics. And then some things like evaluation along the adjacent corridors, especially when they're owned by a different jurisdiction than the City of Tampa, are recommended for additional study. And then did each of the schools, and I told you I'd go fast. Okay, so, and then, as I mentioned, we did an encouragement and educational ideas. We got together and brainstormed with many of our people, our stakeholders that know a lot more about this, like marketing professionals, and our very own Emily Hinsdale with Sidewalk Stompers was instrumental in our development of our education ideas, as well as Jason Jackman. So thank you guys for your participation and during the presentation. So some of the things are, incentivizing the programs that are working and getting them expanded to these other schools. And then you can see here where that school is in the middle. That's that lane that needs to be painted. I will tell you that A 13-year-old looking to earn an Eagle Scout badge has already approached me and said they wanted to do a project. And I said, I have a school you could adopt. And so the principal, you can see the little logo there. That's our new school logo. He'd like to get it represented somewhere, so it looks like we might use some paw prints and the greyhound dog in that area. And we have a Girl Scout that's so it's really cool. So we did have a focus on low cost recommendations in the report as well. And then here, like information, who do you call? So you go out to these and they're brand new principals and they've got lots on their plate and they're like, they don't know who and what, it is kind of complicated even for us to figure out. So this is kind of imagined as a poster and or a magnet to throw on a file cabinet. So all of the staff at the school district would know, like, oh, we have a tree limb blocking the school sign. Who do we call? So it gives you the resources. Oh, we want to do a school walking bus program. Who do we call? So sidewalk numbers is listed here. So mass producing these and get them distributed through the school district is one of the things. These are mentioned as yard signs and or the geofencing broadcast. So on the geofence, we've had a presentation on it before with that causeway where you cruise through an area and you get you get information later. So you would get an information about properly traversing a school zone or how to properly pass a school bus or reminding them that you're in a special area with vulnerable users. Or like I like to say, you came 10 minutes later, you would have left 20 minutes faster because they get there so early and idle. And then maybe something about environmental factors of doing that. So we've got these developed. They can be customized for the school. They can be change the colors to the school colors if it's legible. So you can add there's zero logos on them. So these are a product of our representation. And again, something that we'll work with Cutter hopefully to be able to do a pilot of the geofencing messaging at a specific school. So I mentioned some of it. And then I mentioned the school streets, the geofencing, speed is a big thing. So encouraging more speed enforcement. In fact, getting a camera to do automated speed enforcement, although not technically legal in the state of Florida. We've heard another school district uses it and sends letters, not tickets, but just lets them know, hey, you travel a school zone, you might want to know that. And and then there's some also some ones installed. We then heard when we started digging into it on school buses. Same thing. You travel near that school bus, and you would get a specific alert. And I'll remind you that all the materials, including blow-ups of the maps and the detailed reports, are at planhillsborough.org. School, and then I want to thank Kelly Viron with the City of Tampa. She was our partner on the project. And then Baron Pierce did a great job supporting the analysis. That concludes my presentation.
And thank you for that presentation. Let's have some discussion. I'd like to go with Ms. Ensdale first.
I don't know what you want me to discuss, except that I hope that some of the quick build projects can be moved along through some of the City of Tampa fairly quickly.
Alrighty.
Raised crosswalks are something that we've done a lot recently, and they have issues on the design and implementation, meaning not every road is set up to actually have a raised crosswalk because the curbs are kind of depressed, or maybe they don't have curbs. There's a lot of like just open swales in the city. So you end up running into an issue where you have drainage concerns and then maintenance concerns as well, because a lot of times you have to have the ADA grades. So what you're showing, what we're kind of switching to because of that is rather than the idea of raised crosswalk is vertical deflection, slow down traffic, and then they say higher visibility on the crosswalk, but it's only a 6-inch difference, so it's not going to like really raise the profile of any pedestrians. So what we're looking at doing is, rather than doing a raised crosswalk, is doing speed tables, the same type of speed controls on either side of the crosswalk. So a vehicle would slow down before the crosswalk. You can still do an enhanced crosswalk, whatever you want to do, but you get rid of the maintenance concerns and you can deploy them a lot cheaper and easier than you can an actual full-fledged raised crosswalk. So just some thoughts there. That's a good, we'll have a few, we'll be working with the county on adding that to Beta Bay at Lois very soon.
Okay.
So that would be the first pilot location, but we have full-on capital projects that are going to be employing that as well. So I actually would like to study it like a before and after and look at yielding and stuff like that. So
Okay.
just a thought.
Let's get, and we can reflect that, because these are always just conceptual and then recommendations. But I also forgot to tell you, let's see here, that's something we discovered from our community traffic safety team contact when he was a stakeholder, is the portable speed bumps. They have them out there, we can just roll them out and put them in. And I guess some communities use them and then pull them up at night so they don't have the noise. Like, dun-dun, dun-dun. You know, so I was like, wow, I don't know if we can go out and do that, but you could try them in an area and see, oh, does it work? And then you don't have the drainage thing, or you just do it through the school year, maybe.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
They're $675 online. So I was like, oh, so we put it as a recommendation. Kelly was supportive. I'll at least put them in there as maybe a pilot to try near our school, and then maybe you can help sort out your speed hump or raised crosswalk idea. Another thing I forgot to mention is school district approaches. They got this big sustainability project, so they have green teams at each school. And Emily knows it's really hard to get into the schools to help roll out some of the recommendations. So these green teams are going to be a great partner. They're looking for ideas. Walking and biking school are totally sustainable, so they're very excited to be our partners in helping us implement.
And then just one other thing on Spruce Street for Just and Stewart, that's actually vacated. I don't know if that was mentioned, but that's Spruce Street by Just Elementary and Stewart. That's actually vacated right away. It's a privately owned road.
It's noted in the report. I can tell Kelly didn't make you read it.
Any other comments? Ms. Hinsdale?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to mention one idea that I thought was really interesting that came up in this study was having, and it's unfortunate we don't have anybody here from the school district who participates in this, but having the school district have a specific person in charge of walking and biking transportation. You have an overall transportation group and they spend a lot of time doing buses, but there are other areas that have somebody who especially focuses on that and then could serve as the logical liaison with the city or the county, depending on whoever was needed in that area. If anybody has contacts with the school district, I think that would be an idea to continue to push forward.
I have a meeting set up with our school board member, Jessica Vaughn. It's a TPO member, and it did come up at her meeting with high-level staff. So follow up.
Michael, you had it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of bothers me about this, the school streets thing to me makes a lot of sense, almost like a neighborhood crime watch. You know, like having that, you know, quarter of a mile around a school be sort of this slow zone, you know, make it 15-mile-per-hour speed limits, who cares? Like, these are kids. But the other part that, and correct me if I'm missing this, but I don't think this really gets into the responsibility of transportation off the school grounds, and specifically, like if you look at something like Shaw, which is off of Fowler, or if you're looking at Jefferson, which is near, you know, Cypress, near major roads, near major redevelopments. I just as the city has now started requiring homes, you got to build a sidewalk. You require developers to do the same thing. Is there a model to incentivize residential, either small residential or single family, you know, like the duplex townhome or single family? Are there places where they've incentivized sidewalk building? Because that would start to reduce some of these gaps. And in so many of these communities, you have these large sidewalk gaps because of that. These neighborhoods were built before sidewalks were a thing. And then one last thing I want to add too, if you go back to that top 10 list, I feel like a lot of those schools are magnets. And in this research, we're able to determine how many of those kids are actually neighborhood kids versus they're coming in through some other form of transportation. Because West Tampa is a good example. West Tampa is right near McFarland Park. Well, one's a magnet and the other isn't, but they're almost within sight distance of each other. So if McFarland Park, they have an issue with families park across the street at the park and walk across McDill, and they have a signalized intersection because of it. But West Tampa, literally behind, one block over, is one of the top 10 schools for safety issues. So I wonder how much were you able to see that the magnets, maybe the neighborhood's a problem, but the magnet school itself is primarily a commuter school, which is then creating a whole different set of issues.
Okay, so that one, yes, because I was like, wow, magnet schools, everybody's bus, but no, we had the heat maps of where the students are. It is a magnet school to bring in some additional, but there are local kids attending that school, and they're so tiny and concentrated in the city of Tampa. I was like, oh, the data supports us looking at this.
I just want to make sure you had
Yes,
that.
yes, because I'm like, oh, I'm not losing money on these schools. So yeah, I'm a little surprised. Plus then Stewart was a magnet, but it's in the middle of Just and Blake.
Yeah.
Like the whole street is a nightmare and it's a bus. So actually one of the recommendations I put in there is like, consider turning Stewart into not a magnet, especially with that ginormous housing going in and all that redevelopment going on. And then regarding the adjacent studies, every single adjacent study, I can remember I asked Kelly and send all the, so the reference, Ballard Avenue, they're going to see a little referenced in the study, coordinate and implement all FICA, multimodal recommendations of Ballard. Cypress, lowest complete street, or like Gig, we made sure our recommendations didn't conflict with those, and we looked at those, and if there was something that should have been communicated to a few of the schools, yeah, it's all on there. Then, yes, even with the 2018 school study, that went into the moves data and the base data. So when they have I'm so excited that city listens to these reports and stuff, they've used it. Like anything that was a recommended school gap in those previous studies rose to the top of the ranking because, they need sidewalks everywhere, but it's really needed in these areas around these schools. And then they took the schools in ranked order of dangerous to safe, and gave them more points based on, are they around a school, are they around a most dangerous school, because needs are huge. So yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Just a minor point when we're talking about, adding sidewalks that don't exist. Obviously, we said they don't exist. It wasn't a thing back then. Especially around schools, I would consider making the sidewalk a greater width than the standard. When you get students that are walking and biking, it's hard for two people to pass each other. It becomes dangerous. People go on roads, and especially the younger kids, they are more apt to bike on a sidewalk than they are on the street next to them. So just think about maybe wider widths of sidewalks.
And we're super tight. We talked with city engineers because we're like, do you really need all these lanes? And what about the on-street parking? Is that so critical and stuff? So in some of these, you'll see the recommendation is to repurpose road area for a buffer bike lane, so they're not on the sidewalk.
Just don't forget about the sidewalks. They also act as bike lanes too. So.
Yeah, that is out there, a lot of mature trees and existing.
Mr. Durant.
Yes, two things. Great study, great recommendations. Lately, I've been involved in my line of work. We're looking at schools and school safety with RSAs. And one of the things that I wanted, one of my questions was, how many schools that were studied have any sporting facilities on site? And were there any observations done during that time? Because what I have seen is there's a significant amount of pedestrians crossing main roads and going to during the break times, going to restaurants and fast food, and then coming back to that. So were there any schools that had sporting facilities with their observations done during that time.
Yes, that tends to occur at the middle and high school level. This study focused in on a few more elementaries than that. We did one in each of those this go around. But you're right, that plus then when we shipped out to the county jurisdiction, a lot more suburban models with that. Yes, those high schoolers are so like, did it flow
Yeah.
over to the 7-Eleven?
Right.
So, yeah, so that's why it's like, can't engineer it to death, but we did diverters and gates and education and like Lake was high school, they've got the arts and theater, their principal's like, yeah, I love these ideas. And if, when you're ready for developing a PSA, I'll have my students do it. So it's just a matter of like, you know, people and champions and stuff involved or a designated staff person at the school district, because influencing their behavior won't always be an engineering solution. Like, you know, they have a safety schools belt fashion show and it improved, they're really good about their seatbelts now than they used to be, so.
Ms. Kress.
The question regarding your sidewalk jail and the fencing, is that mostly related to the schools themselves from your observation, the fences?
We have this battle between security and safety.
Yeah, that was gonna be my point. Like, I hope that they look at safety through the lens of, you know, childhood obesity, walking, biking, that sort of thing. Because those are very also
Yeah.
important safety considerations, right? So
Yeah,
I know you know that, but.
yeah. So in that case, I'm like, come on, what would it take to shift this, the fence over, keep the sidewalk open all the time, you know? Yeah, so it would be collaboration between the school district and their plans, and as he pointed out, it's actually an easement that they drive on, it's not a technical road, so that's a complicated area, but, so it's, yeah, I'd like to get, and then they close it off because the Riverwalk happens to be on the other side, and then they access to the Riverwalk, but they do have Lockett near the end of school. You can use it for that period of time.
Ms. Hinsdale.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask Emma if you would share your comment as well with Abigail Flores in the county public works, because the school studies they are doing, a lot of them are focused on high school, and I can think of specifically that came up for discussion about kids crossing to restaurants at King and at Gaither, and those are very large nighttime activity places as well, and I don't think that they looked at the nighttime activity, so that would be a great point to share.
It's dark. I have good news.
Yeah.
Abigail's coming in January. Yeah, she's gonna bring her update to all the school projects. And she's been collaborating with us on some webinars, so we're gonna get to see what this, because this county took our list last time and went off and did their program. City asked for some help from the TPO to get to their next stage, so.
Ms. Hinsdale.
Yeah, can I make my final comment and then I'll stop? Just this weekend, Saturday morning at Just Elementary, which is one of the schools on the list, we'll be installing 2 crosswalks to classrooms with Walk Bike Tampa, and have quite a few activities going on there that the city may or may not know about. But lots of kids out, and we hope any of you want to come out and join us. And then the following 2 week Saturdays, December 10th and December 17th, we will be doing a paint project at Roosevelt Elementary. Yeah, I will. That it's a really interesting and I think new design for City of Tampa of using paint to narrow the roadway around the school. Hopefully slow some traffic around there and the kind of lane dodging that occurs in the car line in the morning. And I'm looking at the design for that. I was thinking there'd be a really great thing to translate to West Tampa Elementary. It's a similar setup with the road just kept getting wider and wider and wider over the years, and it could, well, we're not going to be able to change that in the near future. Paint could change that.
And I did send the Girl Scout to your event on Saturday, so she can get ideas.
Yes, sir.
Has there been any consideration of, particularly with high school age, integrating parks more into the transportation system for these high schools? I mean, when I went to high school, we didn't have any bus, we had no bus. Everything was public transit, subsidized transit through tokens, but I mean, that technology is advanced forward.
Yes, and that was a discussion during the previous study and working group, and we got so far that it was even like all summer and all spring break, it was incentivized as a pilot where students could get on and off for free and get used to using it. And we had presenters come present that there's laws and limitations to public transit routes. They can't be diverted to go near schools on purpose. So we looked at that, and then also in this one, like Jefferson and Shaw, some of the kids use public transit to get near their school and then walk the rest of the way. So we reflected on that in our recommendations. So yes, yeah.
How about, I know we're non-public schools being drawn in or being asked or invited to look at this stuff?
Not in this request, but all charter schools are considered public schools, so they were part of the analysis. Private schools, we don't.
Could they be invited to look at this information?
They can look at the information and use the toolkits to apply to their schools for sure. We don't have any authority or regulation over them, and we have a group that requested us analyze, or we have the data for that as easily. School district shares their data with us readily. Some private schools don't have to. But it could be if there was a need.
Could they opt in?
Sure. I mean, they can look at the information. It's just we didn't go out and study them, and we don't have their data, and we didn't analyze their crashes. But yeah.
Anyone else like to comment? I don't have children, so the lens that I have to look through is the city of Tampa and the constituents and their concerns that I hear. To your point, Reno, we now have 4 schools, Just, Dunbar, Stewart, and Blake, which are all going to be within a mile and a half of new development. We need to make sure that the children that walk there are going to be safe on our sidewalks and make sure that there is viable ways for them to get there. We have no more room for schools to be built in the city of Tampa. They're going to have to go up. We're having more people come in. Sidewalks are the only viable way, thanks to the state of Florida, because if you do not live within 2 miles of the school, you now have to walk, or your parents have to take, or ride a bicycle. Safety in walking and biking within the city of Tampa is going to have to be number 1 for our kids. You have the children that finally one day when mom lets them out of the car and goes to give them a kiss, oh no, mom, don't do that. They're the ones that are going to start walking to school because they don't have cars, they're not old enough to drive. You're right. City of Tampa is going to have to put his foot down and say, developers, you're going to have to do something about protecting our children when you bring in more development to our area. You're right.
Can I just add one thing?
Go ahead.
You know, you look at these top 10, so I'll say the quiet part out loud. Most of these schools are in economically distressed neighborhoods.
Right.
These kids, the only way they have to get to school is walking or riding the bike. And if you don't provide that safe route, they're never going to get to school. If they're never going to get to school, they're never going to be able to move up to a different socioeconomic status. And this is literally about making sure kids have a future. And so that's why I mentioned, you know, could we somehow incentivize a single family home building a sidewalk in front of their house? Are there things that other communities have figured out? Because there's only so many places where you do have a large development coming in where you can do a sort of wholesale area-wide change. But areas like Potter, I'm forgetting the other school that's over there around the University Park area, but there's 2 elementary schools, like one's off 22nd, one's off like 15th, that you go through that's a single family neighborhood, and they were never built with sidewalks because they weren't in the 50s.
And I think it's time we stop incentivizing and actually start demanding. All for transportation stopped us dead in our tracks as far as sidewalks, bike lanes, and other things that would be safe for our children to get to school. So it's time we stop incentivizing and start demanding. And that's my own personal opinion. Just throwing that out to the universe.
Did the recent work that Sidewalks Numbers worked with staff on modifying the land development code to make it a lot harder to exempt out of building the sidewalk. So got to get a little time building.
It only works if it's enforced.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding is frequently that's just shoved aside. Still, as I'm sitting here, I just got an email from a lady who sees a huge development going in across the street from her, and no sidewalks.
And I'll back that up because I saw one the other day where it was exempt for no reason whatsoever. Like everything, and not only that, but we're not seeing it, and the people that are reviewing it are basically looking at it. There needs to be more communication from mobility about the mobility department about what is a true exemption and a true hardship rather than a made up one. And then not only that, but they're simple design solutions that can be forced to be implemented that will facilitate construction of a sidewalk if there is, in the future, if there is a true issue. And that most of that is how we design driveways, because the way that we design driveways, it's prohibitive to ADA. And then the city has to go onto private property, and it's not. The biggest thing, if you look like Sulphur Springs, is probably one of the easiest places to add sidewalks because it's all Miami curve. And you have all the driveways, there is no driveway cut. It's just an apron right behind the curb. So what we do to the transportation technical manual and the rewrites that we will be establishing soon will be very helpful to how easy it is to design sidewalk. Let me just say on Trask Street, for instance, I can tell you that sidewalk right there is probably close to $1.2 million right now.
Mr. Rand, we're going to bring this one in for Orlando because we've been here for an hour.
Yeah. IT, just want to say that IT is actually assembled a task force to look at residential sidewalk, and they're taking practices from some other cities where they have they're demanding those sidewalks from the property owners that are coming in, purchasing homes, and the property owner that's adjacent to the sidewalk becomes responsible for the maintenance as well. So there are some good practices that are coming out that they're assembling now, the kind of a website where people can look up.
That might be the trick, because like someone who's in their 90s and it's older home, like that's hard to force to build sidewalk. But when that home gets sold for, 10 times what the actual value is or whatever, like that person can afford the sidewalk.
Mr. Hardy, the point to a hardship, in my opinion, is very rare. You have a sidewalk which costs $175 per linear foot. And take away the driveway skirt apron, you've got 40 foot. If you're building a home for $500,000, there is, in my opinion, there is no hardship. You can afford to put in a darn sidewalk. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the Tampa School Transportation Safety Study and advance on to the TPO.
Second.
We have a motion made by Mr. Marino, seconded by Ms. Hensdale. All in favor, say aye. Is there any opposed? Thank you all for this wonderful discussion. I love it when we voice our opinions and express things. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Me to start?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amber Russo. I'm the FDOT project manager for the Fowler Avenue PD study. Also with me today is Fred Fox with FDOT, who's the backup project manager on the project as well. This is work program item segment number 448505-1, and I'm here to give you a status on the project. You'll also be given a status on two closely related studies following my presentation.
Before you proceed, may I ask, is this valid?
The bigger picture, yes.
Okay.
And then.
And that's 15th Street, correct? I'm just trying to get my bearing on this picture.
That's the steak and shake, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 15th Street. Okay.
There's the Wendy's, there's.
Thank you.
Okay, bear with me because the format of this is a little funky. Okay, so here you can see a map of the project. It begins in Tampa at North Florida Avenue and ends in the city of Temple Terrace, just west of 56th Street, which is approximately 4 miles. The purpose of the study is to address safety, reduce traffic congestion, and improve multimodal accommodations. Improvements being studied include a transit corridor from Nebraska Avenue to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. These alternatives include a business access and transit lane or BAT lane, a frontage road system, and a median guideway. Also, innovative intersections are being studied for the segment from Florida Avenue to Bull Run Drive. From this slide, you can see there's a lot going on in the 4-mile project corridor. Several studies are being conducted on and adjacent to Ballard Avenue in addition to this study. The 2 project teams you'll hear from after my presentation include HART's Arterial Bus Rapid Transit or BRT project, which is shown along Nebraska Avenue and then along Fowler and then north on Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Also, you're here to hear from the Planning Commission for their Fowler Avenue Vision Plan, which encompasses a large portion of this map. All of these studies will provide the framework for improvements along Fowler Avenue. With the redevelopment of the University Mall and the addition of a new U.S. football stadium, we can all agree that Fowler Avenue is in need of improvements to address safety for all users. This slide shows all crashes that have occurred in the project corridor for the 5-year period from 2015 through 2019. As the graphic reveals, there were over 3,300 crashes, with 75% of these occurring at 10 specific intersections. 53 of the crashes were considered severe, resulting in 46 incapacitating injuries and 9 fatalities. Please note all 9 fatalities included a pedestrian or bicyclist, which is shown on the next slide. Like I said, all these crashes involve a pedestrian or bicyclist. In total, there were 120 crashes, resulting in 9 fatalities and 17 incapacitating injuries. These crashes represent 51% of all severe crashes in the corridor. Approximately 88 of the total 120 crashes, or 73%, occurred between Nebraska Avenue and Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, which is where the transit corridor is being proposed. I also want to mention the segment of Fowler from Nebraska to North 52nd Street is listed on the City of Tampa's high injury network. From Nebraska Avenue to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard, Fowler is currently an 8-lane divided roadway with numerous median left turn lanes. We also have 7-foot bike lanes that are located adjacent to the travel lanes, and sidewalks are located on both sides of Fowler. The existing right-of-way width totals to 185 feet. Today, the eastern segment of the project from Bruce B. Downs to 56th Street is a 6-lane divided roadway with 7-foot bike lanes and 5-foot sidewalks. The existing right-of-way width totals to 230 feet. Now let's look at the 3 alternatives for the transit corridor from Nebraska Avenue to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Alternative 1 includes repurposing the existing outside lanes as BAT lanes for business access and transit, meaning they would be marked for bus use and for vehicles making a right turn into a business or a side street. This alternative also includes 12-foot share use paths along both sides of Fowler, and based on preliminary analysis, minimal right-of-way acquisition may be required. Alternative number 2, frontage road concept. The frontage lanes would be located parallel to and separate from mainline Fowler Avenue. They would be utilized by non-transit vehicles and would provide access to local businesses. Vehicles on the main line can access the frontage lanes via slip ramps and vice versa. Transit vehicles would utilize the outside BAT lanes on the main line. Shared use paths or wider sidewalks would be located adjacent to the frontage lanes, and minimal right-of-way acquisition may be required. The third and final alternative includes a median guideway for transit vehicles only. Stops to be located near intersections and crosswalks to allow for safer pedestrian access. Non-transit vehicles would be permitted to make turns at designated intersections and locations. This concept also includes the shared use paths on both sides, and based on preliminary analysis, minimal right-of-way may be required. As previously mentioned, the design of Fowler Avenue has user safety first and foremost. Narrower travel lanes and other proven traffic calming strategies are being considered. To accommodate these measures, the speed limit on Fowler Avenue may be reduced. Also from Florida Avenue to Bruce Dunn, or from Florida Avenue to Bull Run Drive, innovative intersection alternatives will be studied. And pedestrian and bicycle facilities will be enhanced throughout the corridor. Like I said, innovative intersections are intended for major streets with higher volumes of traffic like Fowler Avenue. They modify vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle movements at conventional intersections to reduce delay, increase efficiency, and provide safer travel for all road users. The DOT manual on intersection control evaluation will be utilized to determine the best possible intersection designs. These include R cuts, displaced left turns, through cuts, and single loops. Public engagement is underway and will continue throughout the duration of the study. These study kickoff presentations will be given at the remaining TPO committees and eventually to your board. The project kickoff newsletters in your packets were mailed to properties along the corridor and sent to stakeholders. Another newsletter will be sent to announce a future public meeting not yet scheduled. The project website is active and will be updated continually throughout the study. Small group meetings will be held with interested community groups within and adjacent to the study area, and also an alternatives public workshop will be held once the alternatives are evaluated. A public hearing may be held if necessary based on the preferred alternative. As the schedule shows, public involvement will occur throughout the study. Data collection is underway with alternatives development and evaluation to follow. An alternatives public workshop is anticipated for the second quarter of 2023 calendar year, and if necessary, a public hearing toward the end of next year. For more information on the project, please visit the study website or feel free to contact me at the information provided on this slide. And if the committee is ready, I'll turn it over to Hart for their study, or I can take questions now. It's up to you.
Is there any questions that can be asked? Let's go with Mr. Duran, and we'll go to Mr. Hardy.
Part of the public outreach is geofencing being considered as part of to reach out to those commuters that go to Fowler, in addition to those that live within the boundaries of the project.
I don't know if FDOT has used geofencing for the couple months, but definitely look into that.
I think they use it for the Kearney Camel Causeway safety study.
Yeah, safety is using it a lot. DOT for public outreach and education. They're getting a lot of good feedback, especially people that go to work zones. It's very useful. They don't get the message instantly while they're driving. They get it after, but as long as they went through that area, to that fenced area, they'll get the message eventually on their social media. They have Instagram or Facebook or that kind of stuff. So useful tools.
Please.
If I may, thank you. Jay Collins, Planning Commission staff. Again, as part of the public engagement strategy between the three partners in this, Planning Commission is using geofencing for this. So the December 13th, as well as the December 14th virtual meeting, which I'll be talking about here shortly, that the Planning Commission is hosting, geofencing through Facebook and such will be a part of that.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes, so looking at the initial concepts with the RCUT and everything else, I understand the need for safety and capacity, but RCUT in an urban setting is not ideal. I mean, it's a highway intersection. Like looking at this, I know we look at the median as a transitway, and it's really important to look at the fact that no one crosses that road because it's so dangerous already. So it's a design that will be a failure if people have to cross the road immediately to get to transit. Then that's already a barrier that we're creating. What I'm trying to recommend is that DOT does not look at this corridor as one state road, but I understand that there's a need for capacity around the interstate and things like that. But after you get out of that, it needs to be an urban design all the way through. So don't look at it as one corridor. Look at it from piece to piece. What is the section immediately after the interstate on? Plus, just one minor design note. There's a trip left off of the a trip right off of the interstate to get on. It's an oblique angle, and it's like I would be interested in seeing the crashes there. No one knows what that means because there's a right turn arrow that says people think that you can't turn on red. There's a sign that says you can turn on red. We have three vehicle lanes turning on red. There is absolutely no way that you can see people coming on. So it's just things like that when you look at it, and none of that design belongs in the urban setting whatsoever. So I just really want to try to look at the context, change the roadway, not the classification, but the design of the roadway to reflect the actual context that is around it and what it's going to be in the future, because it will develop a lot more in the future.
Anyone? Yes, Ms. Hedges.
I was curious, what does truck traffic look like on Fowler?
I would have to look into what the percentage is. I did look at recently where, seems to be mostly from McKinley East to I-75. That seems to be where the majority of the trucks are, and not so much from 275 to McKinley/40.
Ms. Hinsdale.
With 6 to 8 lanes, it's not really a great setup for any kind of mid-block crossing, but mid-block crossings are desperately needed all along that corridor because that's where you see people. I mean, I watched a father push his child in a stroller through the middle of that the other night. The option that he would have involved a half an hour walk up to the next intersection and back down to where he was going. And that's just not feasible. And that's why you have pedestrians putting themselves in risky situations like that.
Yeah, I agree. We're working closely with our safety department, and they had already identified at least one mid-block crossing they wanted to see near 12th Street. So we're definitely adding that, but there will be more as we.
It's not a bid block either. It's a crossing, legal crossing at an intersection. So it's an unmarked crosswalk, and the whole idea of bid block, the only reason why it's called bid block is because we have medians and directionalized medians going through. That is a legal crossing. We need to have crossings where at intersections, because that's where they make sense.
Right, but if the intersection is like 2 miles from the
I know.
next one, then you're.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We should treat intersections as crossings and not just say, okay, well, we got mainline vehicles going through. We can't have an intersection there. There is an intersection there. It's not a highway.
Ms. Josh.
This seems like a great road, even though I know it's expensive for a raised crosswalk. So I know it's not accessible, but providing as many different types of options for crossing the street is essential, and they have to be 100% safe. We are a growing city. We're going to have to start using these bigger city devices.
Ms. Kress.
It's my understanding, at least a couple years ago, that the Coast Bike Share program on the USF campus was one of the busiest campus bike share programs in the country. And I say that because, I think we're all seeing, at least in the greater downtown area, that micromobility is, and electric bikes are absolutely the future. And I would think that all of the students who live in that area are going to be real early adopters in that. So just, I would really recommend that you give a lot of thought into safe space for them, and then safe space for a pedestrian is not same space as someone on an e-bike going 27 miles an hour. So I think just cities need to kind of figure this out, and it'd be great if we could pilot something like Fowler.
Yeah, a great idea. We're definitely paying close attention to access from campus to existing and the future student housing that's being built, as far as like for the students that are walking or biking or e-bike.
Yeah, that campus is really growing, so it's off-campus connections is key.
Anyone else? Arizona, I'm sorry. Yes.
I came in early, so we just about the level on what the can put.
We're talking about the whole design from 275 to 30th Street regarding Fowler. So we're talking about the whole stretch of Fowler Avenue.
That's a very dangerous football. So the one thing that I like is not long enough for someone to cross 4 or 5 lanes. I go to USF and over there. The thing, real thing, to get slow. I like it not long enough. Football.
It's such a big road too.
It is not tiny.
She got it. And there's 2 more presentations related to the same corridor. So
But I have a comment, which is actually a question from on. Ready? Okay. On the south side of Fowler Avenue, where all the fast food restaurants are between 15th and 30th Street, there is a 50-foot easement that I believe is owned by Tico. Why hasn't FDOT looked at that for a very safe pedestrian bicycle throughway? I know that people have to be on the north side of Fowler. I know that they have to cross. But with that easement that I still believe is Tico's, why can't that be used for walking and biking to make it a heck of a lot safer?
Yeah, that's an idea that I'm definitely thinking of.
Thank you.
I was just going to add that the city of Temple Terrace has been very interested in using that easement. I know there's been some, the Bosie property there's been some resistance by the county. That's what I've heard in the past few years.
But it is huge. You could still have delivery trucks going in through there and still have 20-foot wide bicycle pedestrian safety route from 15th, I believe, all the way to 30th. And then if you can incorporate some of that into the Mosey area. That's just a question I hope I can get an answer on the next time we meet.
Just real quick, Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn is a great example of an arterial that's designed for an urban area. So if anybody wants to look at that on Google Maps, that's a good example of what you could do.
All right, let's go forward. Thank you.
Where'd you go?
Hello, thank you, Amber. Hi, committee members and everybody present. My name is Garcia. I'm part of the planning staff at HART. And I'm here to tell you where we are at with the Tampa arterial BRT study. So first, how did we get here and what has happened to date? So the BRT study started in the 2018-2019 timeframe with a phase 1 that came up with a recommended alignment approved by the HART board in late 2020. In parallel with this phase 1, there's been the TOD project, which should wrap up at the end of this year, looking at strategies for transit development along the entire BRT corridor. The recommended alternative was considered expensive, and given the uncertainty and now certain death of the surtax, the board asked for a lower cost alternative. So that's when phase 2 came about in early 2021. This low cost alternative was approved by the board earlier this year, and it was moved on to design. So that's where we're at right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what recommended and lower costs look like in a bit. First, I'll give you an overview of the bus rapid transit corridor. So this would be the Florida-Nebraska Fowler corridor connecting downtown Tampa with the university area. It is Hart's top 3 busiest routes run between these 2 points, USF and downtown. And 2 of those routes are actually the Florida and Nebraska route. They're always fighting for the top 3 spot, like 2nd spot. This corridor is also important because it's not just about the university and downtown, it's also about connecting communities like Tampa Heights and Seminole Heights, jobs and residents there to jobs and residences in the university and downtown. The recommended alignment from the phase 1 study is the Limeball Avenue crossover. The intent is to avoid going from Florida to Nebraska too early on, because then we will be duplicating the Nebraska Avenue service, which is a Metro Rapid, which is a BRT light, so kind of bus rapid transit, but with minimal capital investments. And also this avoids car dealerships on Florida north of Limeball and focuses the service on the more dense parts of the Florida corridor. So what does this look like for Fowler? Okay, that should do it. Fowler, the station areas, first, I'll caveat, they are subject to further study, but tentatively there'll be 3 stations in Fowler at 15th Street, 22nd Street, and Bruce B. Downs. And there'll be a 4th one on Nebraska, but that'll be likely on Nebraska south of Fowler, not on Fowler proper. The importance of serving Fowler is about the transit demand that's latent here. There's a high concentration of high-need communities, including low vehicle ownership households, lower income households. There's also a number of transit-oriented development or redevelopments going on, the most notorious of which is the University Mall, but I understand there are others in the works. And this would enable connections for the Fowler residents with jobs at downtown Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, and vice versa, residents of those neighborhoods with jobs in one of the biggest employers in the region, which is USF and its surroundings. So let's go zoom in further to the street level. So first, big fat caveat, this is the outcome of the BRT study. This is being studied by FDOT, as you saw from Amber's presentation. So this is just what the BRT study said a few months ago. Now FDOT is looking harder into it. The BRT study recommended or preferred alternative for the Fowler piece is a 8-lane road with a median running bus-only lanes. That's preferred in terms of travel time savings, but it's also more capital cost intensive. There is the lower cost alternative, which is a 6-lane road with business access and transit lanes on the curbside. This will be lanes shared by buses and regular cars who intend to turn right into a business or a cross street, ideally assuming enforcement is implemented. There is a $40 million gap between the two, which is why the lower cost alternative seems more appealing. And that's in terms of capital. In terms of operating, the lower cost is slightly more expensive because it takes longer to go end to end. The longer the bus is running, the more fuel, the more labor, so it's more expensive, so to speak. Then what is next? So we are currently working on a scope of work for the design of the lower cost alternative. Once that's wrapped up, we'll be moving on to permitting, engagement, and seeking funding matches from federal, state, and local partners. And after that, construction would come. However, you may ask, is there an implementation timeline? No, there was none before November 8th. There is even less of a timeline after the tax referendum didn't pass. So there is no secured funding for the entirety of the corridor. There is always gonna have a timeline, but there is pieces here and there, like the Fowler PD&E will fund the Fowler part of it. There is a study on the south part of the corridor, like Tampa Heights, south of MLK area, that would fund that part of the corridor. But the whole thing is not funded, not only in terms of capital, but also in terms of increased frequency and operating costs. So that is my piece. Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Jesus, and I am to pass it on to the Planning Commission unless you have a question or comments.
Comments or questions? Ms. Grass.
I don't know a lot about FTA funding, but is one of the alternatives over the other more apt to get FTA funding?
Well, that would require more in-depth studies in terms of feasibility and eligibility for the capital improvement grant program from FTA. They look at several factors, not only travel time savings and need for the project, but also the availability of local matches, which no surtax, there is no dedicated funding, so the local match is more limited than what it would be. So yeah, those are the two things we're juggling there.
If you built the lower cost option on the outsides, and then funding did become available to do it on the inside, would that outside investment still make sense?
You mean outside as in the ends, university and downtown?
No, I mean the lower cost option on the outside lanes as opposed to the
Okay.
middle running. I just wondered if
there could be a
kind of like look at it. Let's start there, and then if we can get the money together, we'll move to the more premium option in the middle of the road.
Yeah, there could be a mix of both options. And I think it may be possible to make one not preclude the other in case funding doesn't become available. Yeah.
Because we have to start somewhere. We can't wait. We can't keep waiting on the shiny new object that we're never going to get. So let's start somewhere at least. But it'd be nice if then we can get the shiny new object eventually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Arizona.
Now, does this study include the House Plus?
Hard Plus, yes, if this service comes to happen, there would be a Hard Plus service area around it. This service is already operating at a lower cost scale. We have routes 1 and 400 on Florida and Nebraska, and there is a Hard Plus associated to them.
But this study, this whole, the whole House Plus, it includes not that one area. That was on time event. Because I got here late because I'm waiting on a van. Supposed to pick me up at 8:30 in the morning. Then give me almost to the bar.
Okay, yeah.
Almost 2 hours away. So that's not correct. That's not correct. On time, man. You may want to look at it again. Your van being big every day. So we're gonna let you know. Look at it. I'm sitting on the dial box for an hour and a half, waiting for a van to come pick me up.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. More funding for paratransit to match this service.
Mr. Arden.
With the Tampa Raise grant, the Tampa Heights project, could that be considered part of the local match? Because that is part of the study corridor. There will be an option for whether or not it's a transit lane now. That's a huge infrastructure investment that is funded both by federal and state dollars. So it should be, that should be able to be used as a local match for this one as well. Because you're building part of the corridor now, or rebuilding part of the corridor now. So just thought if y'all going at the grant funding, I would suggest that you'll use that. And then what happened with the, wasn't there a frontage road concept at one point?
The urban furniture?
No, a frontage road concept. on
Oh,
Pollard.
yes, that's under FDOT's BD&E,
Okay.
currently ongoing for Fowler. For the BRT study, there was no frontage road option study.
What, why not? If it were, if FDOT is looking at a frontage road option, because I saw on the frontage road option, I saw transit facilities on the original.
Yeah, so this study precedes FDOT's BD&E on Fowler. So when this took place, that was before my time at Harvard, but my understanding is that it was not considered an option, not because it's a bad idea, I guess it's just not.
Well, I was just wondering if it would help with the travel times, but.
Yeah, so,
Ms. Russo, please come up to the microphone so you can be heard.
so prior to the PDE study, FDOT conducted like a feasibility planning study. And yeah, this was after Harvard's BRT really got ramped up. And that's where they had identified the frontage road concept. And now we've moved that to PDE as one of the three alternatives.
Okay, is there any chance to update or to marry the two studies so that it is considered as another option for on the BRT?
I think that's a good idea, that we could maybe incorporate in phase 2B. But yeah, I'll make note of it.
Well, we're doing like the PDE for, not for HART, but as far as the infrastructure. So HART would be responsible for the transit infrastructure and stations, like FDOT, we'd be doing the roadway concept. So we're kind of covering that.
Yeah, that works out well. Yeah, it's the same thing with the with Tampa, the Tampa Heights project too.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Amber.
Anyone else? All right, Mr. Collins, are you next?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you.
All right. So good morning, everybody. Again, Jay Collins with the Planning Commission staff. I'm here with Mr. Alvaro Gavalda, and we're actually going to back clean up here. We're going to leave the right of way, and we're going to go into the neighborhoods along Fowler Avenue. So the idea here of a vision study, think of it just like you would a neighborhood plan or community planning in the county, neighborhood planning in the city, but we're going to talk about it as a vision. So something you guys talked about earlier is you talked about sidewalks. So in a vision study, we would talk about mobility. A sidewalk can be a part of that mobility. But what we don't get into in a vision study is what's the width of that sidewalk? What about a design exception of that sidewalk? What about a major modification or a minor modification of that sidewalk? Those are all implementation of the vision itself. An implementation is a regulating plan, that's your code. So this as a deliverable does not actually provide a regulating plan, it does not provide code. What it does is it provides a vision plan which will be policy that will be adopted into the comprehensive plans of unincorporated Hillsborough County in the city of Tampa. So a little bit about it. Fowler Avenue is the intersections of Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa boundaries. I'm not going to show you a map of the land uses. We're just going to talk about those land uses. So if you are traveling westbound on Fowler Avenue from 30th Street to I-275, that frontage on the north is the city of Tampa. If I go into a restaurant in front of the University Mall and open up that front door, that's the city of Tampa. The grease traps in the dumpster are in the county. That's not a dig on the county at all. That's just how it works, right? So you have to think about that in terms of a small businessman or a Fortune 500 company that's going into that community to actually build in that area. They're speaking with folks at the city of Tampa, and they're speaking with folks at unincorporated county to actually get that development done. And so part of this is to begin to have an understanding and a conversation twofold. One, with the neighborhoods so that they can understand about what actually happens in the right of way and how that can influence development in their communities, and vice versa, how they can have an influence in what happens in their communities and how that can go into the right of way. But it's also for all of us who are at 601 East Kennedy, or we're over on Jackson Street, or we're over there off of North Boulevard, so we can have a conversation about how you actually get these developments done in a way that is actually beneficial to all parties involved, so that we have basically a uniform idea of development along Fowler Avenue. So again, we talked about, because they've already been up here, some of the synergy that we have with HART, with the PD&E, DOT with the PD&E, HART with the arterial BRT. That also goes into the idea of the transit-oriented development study that has been ongoing now for a couple of years, going from downtown Tampa all the way up to the university. The University of South Florida as a major player in this area we'll speak about, in the Innovation District and University Mall, and some of the other large institutional uses that are there, whether it's the school district, City of Tampa Parks Department, the university area, CDC, or any of the others. So develop a vision plan for Fowler Avenue corridor that enables equitable redevelopment. Let's talk about what a vision is for a second. Think about it with your own families. You have a vision for what your children or your nieces and nephews or your grandchildren will become. Now, remove yourself from your family and think about it as your community. The way in which you organize yourself and the questions that you ask yourself in a vision should be the same thing. How can my family have a successful family? How can my community be successful? So we achieve an integrated land use and transportation vision for Fowler Avenue. We just talked a little bit about that. Obviously, our partners set the stage for that, and we talked a little bit about that land use. Develop clear and consistent redevelopment strategies across these jurisdictional boundaries. So that vision plan then has a redevelopment plan. That redevelopment plan has strategies for that implementation. So one, I have a deliverable that says what will be the policies going into the comprehensive plans of unincorporated county in the city of Tampa, and then what are some of those strategies to implement those, which would be a phase 2 to actually get some of that code work. Now, this isn't just us in the room. There is a consultant, Kimberly Horn, that is assisting us with this effort that's going to take about a year and a half. So this is actually our study area. Again, I'm north going all the way up to, I think that's 127th Avenue in unincorporated Hillsborough County. I'm going down 109th. I'm going over into the university, the mall, or not the mall, the Tampa Industrial Park over there. Why isn't the university in it? Of course the university is in it, but we have this study boundary as a statistical analysis, and the university is an anomaly. If I start grabbing the statistics for what happens at the university, it throws a lot of my other things off, such as redevelopable lands, employment generation, and everything else that goes on within the study area, because again, we're talking about equity, and we're having an idea of what happens in these neighborhoods as they have redevelopment along the corridor. So a little bit of that statistical analysis is there. 15,000 for a population, the number of households you have there. There's a lot of people in this area that don't have vehicles. If you go driving out there, you see that. You see a lot of people walking, you see a lot of people biking, you see people that are struggling to take transit or they're successful taking transit. It's an interesting case out there. Employment. That's very interesting that there are more, or excuse me, they're not more employees. There are considerably more employees in this area than what you have countywide. So you take it with that idea of going, like for every 100 people that you have in the county, basically how many jobs do you have? And what you look for is about 50 jobs per 100 people that you have. So you see in this area, we're well over that. If I remove ourselves and go to other areas of the county that we have worked with lately, Waimama, for instance, or Baum, for instance, way down south in unincorporated Hillsborough County, that actually goes all the way down to 11 jobs per 100 people or 15 jobs per 100 people. So you can see what we have here. Basically, we're upwards of 75 jobs per 100 people. There's a lot of activity going in this area. So some of the issues with household income, the study area is median household, and this is an ESRI number, so this is not HUD, you know, a little bit of a different thing that we have here. But basically, we're 64% lower than what you would see in the MSA area here. And that goes right back to some of those issues about the fact that you don't have a lot of households that have cars here. It's kind of a bellwether in our metro area that if you have cars, you're moving up your socioeconomic ladder, because that's one of the easiest ways for folks here to actually find employment in our MSA area is, can they get to their job? And this is an area where you see only a fourth of the community does not have automobiles, and we also have had conversations about the lack of mobility in this area. So no good plan is built in this building. It's always built outside of this building with the conversations of the people that are going to be affected by those plans. So with that in mind, our first community workshop will be on the 13th of December. We'll be in University Mall. We talked a little bit earlier. Yeah, we do some geofencing. We send out mailed notices. We've got signs in the community. The county puts up these huge signs, if you've seen them, for open houses. We've also been in contact with Innovation Place. We've been in contact with the University CDC and some of our other partners about making sure that we get the word out there. And our community partners by FDOT and HART have been invited to participate on the 13th with Planning Commission, city staff, unincorporated county staff, and the consultant at the mall to actually work through this. Where will we be? Second floor, food court, right across from the movie theater up there. Come by and see us. Mobile engagement lab. So basically what happens after we have these workshops, part of this is to get the word out and to drive interest in it. So those mobile engagement labs are looking at stakeholders for this area, whether they are community leaders, business leaders, university, whatever it may be, and doing some, whether they are windshield surveys and the like in the communities. And then a vision toolkit, which are basically going to be a material outgrowth of all of this engagement and as some of the deliverables come along, so that folks that are living in this community can actually bear witness, and they're the ones who can go out in the community and have conversations about what we're doing. Again, just to get involved, QR code works. You can go straight to the project webpage. These are some of the signs that we have that are out in the community. Again, we try to do as much as we can bilingually so that we are prepared to have conversations with folks that are speaking other languages out in the community. So a little bit of our project schedule. You've seen already 2 project schedules. This is the 3rd one you'll see. The next time we see you, one of the things that we hope to do is that you see one slide with schedules and you get to see the overlapping of all 3 of these projects coming together. That's where we are right now. We're just learning to dance with each other, and we're learning about what each can bring to this relationship. Again, this is about a 1-year project that we have. So while we're right now in the basically brainstorming phase, if you will, we'll be working all of next year to provide some of these policies, bring those back to the community, and then late next year, possibly into 2024, is when staff from the Planning Commission, the City of Tampa, and unincorporated county will be bringing this new policy and recommendation to appointed and elected boards within the City of Tampa and unincorporated Hillsborough County. Again, what are my deliverables? So that comprehensive vision plan, the community engagement and feedback portion, the coordination that we have, as well as the comprehensive plan and the strategies for the implementation. So again, you can sign up for email updates through our website. All of our presentations can be reviewed there, background information. You can bookmark it for upcoming meeting dates that we have. Our next steps, again, we're in the finalization for the public engagement plan that the consultant is providing, our first open house that we talked about, and the mobile engagement strategies that will be ongoing after that. So again, all of this you'll be able to find out through our website, and certainly if we come back and provide you an update. And this is us. So if you want to come and talk to us, we're here in this building all the time, but also you can reach out, you can call us, or you can email us. And I think that completes my portion of this presentation. I thank you for your time, and myself, and I'm sure everybody are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any comments or any questions?
No. How many engagement are you gonna be doing? Every time you do same thing going on. How can you get more people from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. everywhere at night? People would late night. They use the bus. There in the university area, the last bus that was leaving there, what about those people that work past the thing? They supposed to get home. That's what they don't want. You do those community outreach engagements. It's the thing, this wasn't time, you wasting money. But those people gonna tell you the same thing that they'll always, or you in the beginning, they want more presentations. They want longer hours for the bus. You go to Orlando, you go to Miami, they run 24 hours. That's what you're gonna hear. So, but you don't want it all, they're gonna take you that thing, I'm taking that. They want to get able to move, get to work, get on.
Yeah, Arizona's right now, our community engagement at the mall is from 5 to 7 p.m. Then the next day, there's a virtual component from noon to 1 p.m. I used to work at University Mall about 20 years ago when there was a Bird Eyes there, right? So what's interesting about it is during the holiday season, the hours are extended. We used to have people who would be looking at their watch that were buying Christmas presents and know that the last bus was about to happen because the hours aren't extended for the bus, just for people shopping, right? So there's a lot of some of that conversation that goes on up there. So yeah, in Arizona, we appreciate those comments, and that is certainly something because we've talked about, you know, should we do weekends? Well, weekends, there's reduced service a lot of the times for heart. So should we do daytime? You know, how should we do this to make sure? Because again, 25% of this community doesn't have an automobile. So we've got to be able to look for ways in which to get people there without us knocking on every single person's door and doing it in an old-fashioned way and going, hi, my name is Jay. Can I come in and tell you about Fowler Avenue?
Are there other locations that you can meet in the area, just as opposed to the mall on the north side?
So we've looked at working at Copeland Park, and we've looked at having stuff on the university, and we're still working with the consultant about where. Ms. Coyle, you've done this for a long time, so you know that obviously if you get good response out of the mall, maybe the next one's at the mall. If you don't get a good response at the mall, got to go back to the well and find another place to have your community meeting. So this isn't the only time that we go to the well. We're going to have other community engagements. We just need to find out what works best for this community.
And when you go back to the well, don't we get the well. You already know what we need. That's like you forget how it's going to do. I mean, here's the same stuff. But you won't get a good response. People don't want to waste their time. It ain't out there. Here's the thing. The thing is over
Ms. Hendricks.
Are you able to do outreach to small businesses and medium-sized businesses that employ service workers in that area?
Yeah, that is part of this. Hopefully through the IP, we want to get into their email listserv, their membership, and have conversations with them as stakeholder group, whether they're, Fortune 500 company or one of the great restaurants that are on the, Indian, Mexican, whatever it may be. Just have a conversation with them.
Ms. Kress.
Jay, just a quick suggestion. Are you familiar with Well-Built Bike Shop that's in?
Yeah, it's in the mall.
Yeah, they're real involved in I think the target market that you'd be looking to get input from.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Always disappointed I can't ride a bike in the mall, but maybe a different conversation for a different day.
Anyone else? I thank all of you for your great presentations, and I hope you've heard from this board, and they're going to take some information that we have given you back. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm seeing that the time is near. We've got about 12 minutes left for this meeting. And I'm concerned that we may not have a quorum left, so I'm going to ask, our next meeting is supposed to be December 21st. And because that is so close to the holidays, I'm going to entertain a motion that we recess that meeting so that we don't have, so that we could rather spend time with our families than to be in this board meeting.
I consider all y'all family. So.
Wait, yeah, thank you. I consider you family too, but there's family that makes me different. So.
Is there anything important?
That's why it's on here, is I cleared the deck and there's topics that can just keep in January, so we could choose to this year without a problem.
Unless Kathy's bringing more pie.
Uh-oh.
I put pressure on her here today. There was a potential.
Well, then we have a motion to recess the December 21st, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Made by Karen Kress, seconded by Arizona. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Now, I do apologize to Ms. Casper and Mr. Johnson that are on the line right now. I'm hoping that we can defer these till January. I see you standing up. Come on up to the podium.
Is it time sensitive?
Is it time sensitive? Do you need something from us?
I do want to share, good morning, Sarah Caper from Hillsborough County. And maybe we can share the presentation with you that I sent to Lisa. We are in the middle of our public engagement for the Greenways Master Plan. We are in a couple phases of public engagement, but the round we're in right now closes next week. And we'll be presenting it to the Hillsborough Greenways Committee. So for the sake of time, I understand that there isn't time to do it today, and I'm happy to come back later to share information. But I do want to share with you today that we are doing outreach right now, collecting feedback. So Lisa, if you could share maybe the PDF I sent you. And if people have questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide additional information.
So Ms. Silva, you will get the presentation to us
Yes,
via
and a link for
email?
public comment, because they have a public engagement page.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. Thank you for your understanding.
Thank you.
We'll see you after the first of the year. Where's that? Mr. Johnson, are you still online?
We have Brent.
I'm sorry. Brent, are you online?
Yes, I'm here.
I hope you will understand. Is yours presentation time sensitive?
No, it can wait till after the first of the year.
All right. I thank you very much. And I thank all the board members here for your understanding. Also, we had a very productive day, and I'm glad that we had the dialogue.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Hi, this is Gail, the recorder. Lisa, are you able to see the chat?
Oh, I had it up in the. Oh, yes. Suzanne Monk, I know that, so I'm sending that to the committee too. So most committees are getting the FDOT tentative work program. You know, they come through and update it every year and walk us through. We discussed it as committee rep liaisons when we decided that there might be the opportunity for recess in December. And the two committees that might recess, we're going to send that out direct to the committee members and remind you that DOT has a public hearing process to provide feedback on it. So that would be your opportunity to comment since you won't be seeing it at a committee meeting. So I'll be reminding you to go submit your comments via their other public comment portals.
Thank you. I can provide the presentation as well that you can send out to them
I
if
have
that
a
works for you.
Yeah,
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Just wanted to check with y'all.
thank you.
And again, I thank you for this dialogue we've had today. My favorite saying is dialogue solves everything. Everybody, have a great holiday season. Have a safe holiday season. To my family here, enjoy yourself.
All right, just pie and parking permits.
What?